to now invite another Pacific leader to join us on the podium, Reverend James Bhagwan. Padre, I can't see you, but there you are. And, you know, just to take a few moments, Padre, if you don't mind, to reflect back what you've heard in this Talanoa, maybe share some key insights and to offer a summation of this discussion. So thank you very much for that and for being so patient with us.
Thank you, Audrey. And you put me at a pulpit. I will not preach for 3 hours, don't worry. I looked at that picture and I heard so much about age and men. I'm glad I shaved today. And even though I'm a mature minister, I'm still seen as the young boy in the church when I meet the older ministers. So I'm the carry boy. But if we reflect on what we've heard today, and I want to start right at the beginning because we began with the leadership of Indigenous people. That wasn't just an item that was performed. That was Indigenous people speaking the language of Indigenous people in dance, through culture. And we have to recognize that as Pacific people, we don't just speak one language. We speak the language, yes, of policy, we speak political language, but we speak the language of culture, the language of spirituality, the language of tradition, which is what guides us. And today we have had, in the reflections that we've heard, different aspects of that language spoken. What we've also heard is the role that activism plays in shaping our leaders, particularly our young activists, many whom sit on the stage began as young activists, as we heard. And I am reminded from my YWCA connections that the Honourable Prime Minister of Samoa was also a young women YWCA World Member, Council member at one stage as well. So there are many different ways in which our young people can get involved in leadership. I also want to acknowledge that when we talk about leadership, and perhaps I'm not the right person to talk about women in leadership, although I come from a feminist family, I acknowledge a look that our two women prime ministers gave each other when that was mentioned by Audrey. But in that look, another language, a non-verbal language, and I just saw, and that communicated so much about the shared challenges and the shared journeys that they must have gone through, and they reflected on that as they shared their stories today. But in the context of who we are as Pacific people, the reminder that regionalism is part of our identity. We are community, we are Pacific family. It is not an either or, it is an and, both local and regional. The role of traditional leadership, the role of our culture and our values as responsibilities, as custodians that we need to manage, as guardians of our Blue Pacific. As someone who works predominantly these days with civil society, I want to acknowledge that we have so many women in our civil society leadership today. And I wish and I pray that that translates, as we've heard, into the political sphere. Because our leaders are being nurtured there. And maybe they will have that opportunity to come forward. The Pacific churches this year had as our representatives to the first member state parties of the TPNW in Vienna and the Oceans Conference were not represented by the old padres, but by two young women, young mothers, taking the stories of their Pacific to go and advocate. Of course, they were accompanied by a slightly older archbishop, but they worked together. So the intergenerational aspect of leadership is also very important. And our plea to our leaders, of those who have faced the challenge, both in terms of being women leaders, but also young leaders coming through, is to mentor the future leaders of our Pacific, to make that space open and invite them to come forward. The question of leadership and regionalism as you prepare, dear leaders, for your retreat tomorrow is something that we have been reflecting on, and how I wish that this Talanoa was the dialogue we had with civil society and private sector earlier today. But you mentioned some really important things about being anchored, about being rooted. And I would like to conclude this reflection by sharing something that our civil society groups reflected on leadership, on what it means to be Pacific, what it means to be part of the family. And it is a covenant that they put together, and it begins with two words: we are. We are because we have been. We are because we are to be. In solidarity we come. We in turn renew our commitment to build solidarity, recognizing the preponderance of reasons that unite us, and that our weaves are made stronger by the weave of the other. In solidarity we come as Pacific people who are custodians of nature, anchored by our faith and our spirituality. Yet we come as we are because together we hold a vital responsibility. The mantle has been passed on to us by our ancestors from their hands into our hands. If you are interested, I can share you that covenant later. But that is just the introduction to a covenant that civil society have pledged to work together. And it is our hope and our dream that not only with the 2050 strategy, but as you meet tomorrow to discuss and reflect on the future of our regionalism, that it is something that you come out saying, we are. May God bless you all. Naka.
Vinaka Vakalevu, Padre, for really that very thoughtful and deep reflection, and for capturing so many of those important insights and moments. I thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen,